Okay, so review. Last time before last, we met. So I presented you guys this a proof of meaning. How do we know meaning is a real thing? And it's based on human experience. That, while you might meet people, nihilists, they might argue, life doesn't have meaning, why care, doesn't mean anything, blah, 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 blah. One thing they can't deny is that their pain means something, which is interesting. You can't think your way out of pain. You can't, that doesn't matter. No, it matters, and your feelings are telling you it matters. And that it was like from this place that I was positing, well, if pain is meaningful and, suffering exists, if these things are there, well, their opposites are there too. And kind of offer this idea that, when you take on that the definition of bad, is causing people to needlessly suffer, the opposite is to dedicate yourself in such a way where you can start improving everyone's life. And it doesn't just end there. That's just the opposite. But what if it's more? Yeah.
Do you think that a form of improving people's life is causing them to suffer for a little bit if it's beneficial for them?
Maybe.
In a sense?
Maybe. It could. I mean, I would make a distinction between the idea of pain and suffering. Like, we all feel pain in a sense of, ouch, that hurts, or I don't like that. But, but suffering is it's really it's adding on unnecessary pain. It's probably one way of thinking about it. Because I'll tell you, with raising kids, let's say, you have to punish kids. In order to get the best results in behavior, you have to reward and punish. Both have to be there. But the trick with punishing is that you want to set things up in such a way where the punishment is annoying, but you don't make yourself aversive to your kids. So something like, when you spank kids, well, that's probably not the way to go. Just because what ends up happening is most people who spank, it gets out of control. You learn that, spanking works, and it works. It makes kids stop doing what you don't want them to be doing. So you end up training yourself that spanking is a solution. But it actually is a bad long-term solution, because the more you spank kids, the more they act up. The more problems they get, and you make yourself aversive. Like, kids don't like parents who hit them, period. And so what ends up happening is they misbehave more and more and more. You think spanking works because it works as a good short-term solution, so you're spanking more and more and more. And parents who take on spanking as a strategy, 60% of them end up hitting their kid in such a way that's illegal, and it would be defined as child abuse. And that's usually when the parents wake up and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't spank. That's a horrible idea. So, that's definitely causing pain, but you gotta watch it. So, just give kids timeouts. Timeouts work just as well as a punisher, and you don't end up messing up your kid, So, yes, you do have to cause a little pain to people sometimes. Even at the very least, if you say no, someone has a request of you, hey, will you marry me? No. Well, that's going to break his heart. But you might have just saved yourself a life of pain yourself. Yes, you do. You have to hurt people.
Okay.
Just not maliciously. Just don't be malicious about it. That's all.
Did God, I never thought of this sentence, how do we know meaning is a real thing? So, people say God's rules give me meaning. But could he have just given us meaning, in itself, the very thing of meaning? Could he have given us meaning, without the rules? Rules give us meaning, but could he have just given us, just pure meaning?
I'm gonna give you I'm gonna be annoying, okay?
You're gonna what?
I'm gonna be annoying, okay? My answer.
Okay.
Okay. We're gonna play a game. It's your turn.
Seen a horror movie like that once.
Fine. I think I get what you mean. Because I don't know what to do, and the rules, they're the only thing that would help me know anything about the game.
Yeah.
So there can't be meaning without rules.
There can't be meaning without rules. Meaning can only exist when it's bounded and limited. The more limits make things meaningful.
I'm so glad you understood my question.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure if
Okay,
it would make sense.
Yeah. I got you. Okay. And so this idea that okay, well, there's meaning, and at the very least, what is good is not causing unnecessary sadistic suffering to people. Well, maybe that's not the only thing. Maybe there's something more. Maybe all action is meaningful. And so this is where we get into Judaism's perspective on meaning. Is every behavior means something. So it's not as though, like, when you're looking at halachas, it's like, oh, those rabbis, they're OCD, like, come on, tying your shoes, who cares how you do it? It's like, no, if you're gonna buy into this theory that what you do matters, well, then everything you do matters. You can't have it both ways where, there's like a gray area. Some things are okay, some things are not, and then there's like Kefland. Like, no, there's not Kefland. What you do is meaningful, period, or not. But then we get back to the problem of, okay, fine, you want to say meaning's not, you want to say that there's no such thing as meaning, so then why are you so upset you're in pain?
Yeah. Do you also feel that, like, when people leave seminary, for example, like, they get less inspired? Do you feel like it's, like, I could correlate that with not looking at the rule book for a long time, and like, people start forgetting the rule book, or because they're not playing the game anymore?
I think it would be that it's because you changed the field you're playing in.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like, whenever you play a home game, you always play better.
Wow.
You have home field advantage. Here you're in seminary, you have home field advantage. You would know all the rules, you know how to play the game, and you play the game very well here. Just like a football team plays very well when it's homecoming. Aside from the fact they always pick like the suckiest team to play, so they like are trying to make sure they win, but it's a real thing. Like, playing the home field advantage is a real thing. Home field advantage. So it's like, the problem people run into when they leave seminary is that they have to learn how to play the same rules in a different place. And that's going to require using different rules at different times. It's going to require creativity. And it's also a fear evoking, like, you're in a new place. You grew up, let's say, you grew up even like, not religious at all. And so you go home. How do you have Shabbos for the first time in a house that has never seen Shabbos? That's a very interesting environment to make Shabbos. Yeah. How do you do it? And so it's that combination of having to know how to do it in a different place, and also facing the anxiety of having to confront that unknown that, well, makes it like, well, I don't want to keep doing this. This is painful, I think that's a part of it.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know, because it's like this idea of being inspired. I almost kind of like think of it as almost kind of like a clinical depression a little bit, because the way clinical depression works is that, well, how does it end up that someone is just like knocked out in bed, not wanting to do anything in their life? You're lucky if they get up to go to the bathroom, So, well, part of it is like one thing that bad happened. They lost their job and they feel horrible. Or even something good. I mean, it's just as likely to develop depression if you got a promotion or you go on vacation. I mean, the depression happens. So it's like it knocks out a person a little bit, but what ends up happening is, okay, I'm feeling down, like I lost my job. Well, I'm not going to go on my run that I always go on every evening. I lost my job, well, my friends are going out, I don't feel like going out. They actually start detaching from the rest of their life. And so what ultimately makes depression is not you lost your job, it's the fact that you started saying, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that. And you completely detach yourself from the reward of living. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, so I think it's a similar idea that, well, okay, fine, you leave seminary. Well, you have to maintain some sort of connection with meaning. You can't wait for inspiration to happen. You have to seek it. And it's very easy to seek it in seminary. I mean, like, you guys have a schedule and you have a bunch of rabbis who teach and rebbitzins that teach you interesting stuff. Like, you can fall out of bed and find something that's inspirational, but you're not going to have that where you're going to be disconnected from that when you leave. So it's like, you gotta, just like someone who's depressed, man, like, get out of bed, go out with your friends. Like,
you said you when you're depressed, you completely detach yourself from the reward of
living. Wow. So it's like, man, like, okay, same thing. wake up in the morning, make sure you have like a, Rashi next to your bed, set some time to listen to classes.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you go to shul every day. Like, you have to do it. Otherwise, just like depression, you lose the inspiration because you're not inspiring yourself.
Like it's just forgetting about what it could give you. You're not looking at like the good or the bad. It's just like it's forgetting.
Kind of, and it builds. It builds. It's this the more you don't do it, the worse the problem you have. It'd be okay, fine. Like tonight, you didn't want to go out with friends, but the fact you keep doing that, and you've been doing that for 3 months, and it's not just you're not going out with friends. It's like you're not, like I said, you're not going exercising. You're not, reading the books you like. You're not like, man, like you're detached from all of life, and that's what really does it. So I think it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We also 2 sessions back, we also talked about how, well, kind of similar idea here is how some things, some meaning might be difficult to detect. Yeah, that was your question. So I got a couple ideas throwing out there. This idea that, well, maybe we have our terms wrong. Now, I had my grandmother on my father-in-law's mother. Not religious, and more conservative, but keeping Shabbos is still something pretty foreign to her. And we were walking, taking a Shabbos walk when she was visiting Israel once, and man, she was really ragging on the idea of Shabbos. Like, well, isn't Shabbos supposed to be a day of rest? And you're telling me if I carry a napkin outside that I'm breaking Shabbos? Well, I find it more restful to have a napkin. Well, that's a confusion of terms. Shabbos is not restful. It's not. It's the hardest day of the week. It's restful in as far as you cannot do creative actions. But it demands a lot. It demands a lot of thought, of thinking about God creating the world, of thinking about how there's a purpose to reality, thinking about how, ultimately, we say, Shabbos is the source of all bracha. It is the source of all meaning because fundamentally it is living out the idea that God created the world, and there are rules, man. There are rules. It's a very hard day. And, the cool thing about, say, carrying her point, well, it's a creative act when you change an object when you move it somewhere else. That's a creative act. Similar thing of, well, if you go somewhere else, you change. You might be less religious, it might be harder. Like, the environment you exist in actually makes the thing what it is. A ladder has utility when it's next to a house so you can get on a roof, but a ladder in the middle of nowhere does nothing. It actually, the object is different because its function is different.
Yeah. And there's a quote I really like a flower can't grow in the same environment as it can in other environments. That's why you can't blame yourself for the way you act sometimes if your environment it's gonna change you.
Can't blame yourself entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, entirely.
Because you're a part of your environment.
Yeah.
There's that relationship. So another idea is, also another idea why meaning might not feel meaningful is, you might also not have a really good explanation for the thing. A lot of people run around with a third grader level definition of God. So as a 30-year-old, that's just not going to cut it. It just won't. Like, thinking about God as a 30-year-old when I haven't updated my third grader definition of God, it's not going to be meaningful because it's not going to be sophisticated enough. That could be another problem you have if things don't, feel meaningful. And another thing is, maybe you haven't lived as long. Maybe you need to live longer. When you get older, it's kind of interesting how people generally, politically speaking, they become more conservative. Well, because one reason is because they have built a life that they value and do not want to lose. Older people have more to lose than young people because they have the job they built, they have the kids they're supporting, they have the house that they worked for, and you want to protect that. So you actually become more politically conservative because you have more to lose. You value things more. They didn't exist in your life when you were, say, 15 or 19.
Democrats are we want equality for everyone, like socialism, because then everyone's equal, and then you disregard how hard people work.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's more relatable as a young person because you haven't built anything yet. So it was very popular being young. It's like, well, why can't I have the things I don't have already?
Yeah. Well.
And so older people say you don't have it because you didn't earn it. You got to earn it like me. And this is kind of like a perspective thing. And I don't know. I was kind of thinking about this one, and I think like a riff off of this idea that well, you now are limited. You'll always be limited. I was kind of thinking like the worst thing you could say to somebody is you're fine the way you are. If you want to really, really, really say something nasty to somebody, I think the nastiest thing you can say to anybody is you're fine as you are.
What?
Because what that implies is, well, you don't need to get better. And that's just not true.
Okay, yeah.
And it takes away something to live for, really. You're just fine. You're fine the way you are. It's like, no, you're not. You're not. A lot of clients I get, they'll have therapists who will, you're good, you're fine, you're working hard. And they come to me. I'm like, no, you got problems, man. No, that's a problem. Yeah. And it's like they're appreciative because part of it is I'm speaking the truth. Like I'm actually describing their experience. Because when you say, oh, it's fine. It's like, well, really, all the problems in my life are fine? No, they're not. They're problems. It's like, no, yeah, you're not fine the way you are. And it has this underlying hopefulness to it because, well, you're not fine as you are, but you could be better. You can never even start considering being better until
things you can't change.
Yeah, what's that?
Physically.
Yeah, what's that? I don't think there's many things on that list.
What do you mean?
Well, what can't you
too.
change? Or what can't you change a little bit?
What?
Yeah.
I'm saying
he's right though, with all the plastic surgery and everything, like physically you can even change everything about yourself. Too.
Quadriplegic, okay, you got me on that one. You're quadriplegic.
What's a quadriplegic?
So you're missing arms and legs. Okay, fine. But even there, like, okay, so you have people who stepped on an IUD in Afghanistan and like they have artificial legs because they lost both of them. So okay, like that's an improvement from not walking at the very least. I mean, you're right, there's a limitedness to life, but there's something you can't improve?
Are you asking me or just saying that?
A little of both, but you get my point. Like it doesn't mean that there's a difference between making life perfect that never exists. That for sure you're right. You can't make things unbearably beautiful forever. You're lucky if you have like 5 good years. And then it'll be hard and then maybe you'll have 5 other good years. Like life has ups and downs. I'm not joking. Like you got to be ready for it.
Yeah.
If you don't have a health problem now, well, the chances are like someone in your family probably does. And if you don't have anyone in your family who's suffering, well, 10 years from now you will. And we all die. So it's like there's always going to be a problem.
Yeah.
There's always a problem somewhere, but like you always can make it better. Mm-hmm. You can always make it better.
So I feel like when I am feeling really good, I'm like
waiting for the
people
job.
Yeah, in a way. I'm like something's wrong and I just don't know it yet.
And there kind of gets into this idea of, well, yeah, like it's good to have that part to be aware that life is challenging, but at the same time, you don't want it to mask the fact that life is great. I mean, the fact that you can make life better, like who said that could be the case, but it is. I mean, that's just amazing. And like we have plenty to be thankful for. And I mean, the world is designed, the world is getting better, so it must be designed to get better. I mean, like the life is great. Mm-hmm. But you have to have both. Otherwise, it's just like you're living a lie, essentially, if you don't see both. Mm-hmm. Anywho. And also this idea that meaning is communal. That's another thing here, that it might actually be, we kind of talked about the Nefesh HaChaim, it might actually be that there are certain mitzvahs that you just don't connect to. There might be certain ideas that just aren't meaningful to you, and it might actually be your Shorosh and Neshama doesn't connect to it. But it connects to other people. And the fact that you're doing the mitzvah is for everyone else who it does connect to. That we're a society, we're not just individuals. So that could very well be. Okay. Today, I wanted to tackle the question of derabbanans. Why do we have them? Why is it even permitted to have a derabanan? So we have a problem. Because there's a prohibition called baltosif, baltigra, that is forbidden to add or subtract from the Torah. So for example, if you wanted to keep an extra day of Sukkot, that is forbidden. That is a prohibition. If you wanted to have, say, a tefillin, you want to have a fifth box in your tefillin, forbidden. If you wanted to, you're really enjoying Pesach, you want to extend it a couple days, and you're full on in Pesach mode, and you're having matzah l'shem Pesach 10 days later, that's forbidden.
It's excessive. Pesach's a hard one to...
Yeah, right, yeah. Why not? Yeah, everyone wants to extend Pesach. So that's a prohibition. That is forbidden to do. So when you start looking at derabbanans, it's like, well, wait a second, that's really adding. That's really adding to the Torah. So what's going on here? Because the fundamental idea behind this prohibition of baltosif is, well, isn't the Torah perfect?
Yes.
Yes. And that's the right answer. A for the day. But once you give that answer, then you get hit with this problem of, well, if it's perfect, well, why are we adding to it? So what?
We're not perfect.
Yeah. So what exactly does shlemus mean? Yeah. So we're gonna come up with we're gonna have to come up with little things like that. So there's three types. So I thought before kind of approaching that question a little bit, we need to kind of define our terms. First is, what are the types of derabbanans that exist? So we have derabbanans that add on additional restrictions. So something like eating chicken and cheese. That's an example of adding on, extending a particular prohibition. We have additions. So that'd be Purim and Hanukkah. Purim's coming up. Huzzah.
Yeah.
And full-on changes. So something like when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, what don't we do? We do not blow the shofar.
Wow.
That's right. So those are kind of the three types of derabbanans that you're going to run into. So what's going on?
Doesn't that probably make the prayers so much shorter? Because you don't have to wait.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So what's the function? That really begs the question. That's kind of what you were getting to of, well, we have to change our, we're not, it's the Torah is perfect, but we have to deal with ourselves. We have to sort ourselves out. Now that really is the answer, because the function of a derabbanan is not to add to the Torah. It's to act. It has we'll put it this way. It has four different functions to it. Number one is it's keeping us from making a halachic mistake. That would be something like muksa on Shabbos. That's a fun derabbanan. Well, what that does, it avoids us from making a mistake of carrying outside. It might be people will forget. You might just haphazardly leave something in your pocket and you walk out. Or, you might actually think, oh, it's permitted to carry. I got confused. Didn't mean to. It's it's more than just not thinking about it. It's more of an honest mistake. The second function of a derabbanan is to preserve the nature of halacha. So for that an idea of like that is amir lagoy, not being able to ask a non-Jew to do things for you on Shabbos. Well, that's a derabbanan. And the whole reason behind that is because we want to preserve the nature of Shabbos. If you were able to ask a non-Jew to do everything for you on Shabbos, well, Shabbos will kind of disappear, even though you're technically keeping it. This is kind of one idea behind, the Chazon Ish, for example, was struggling with the idea of outlining, well, what's forbidden about electricity on Shabbos? He wasn't so into using, turning on and off a light. And he made the argument it's a prohibition that's a deraisa prohibition. Really put the fear of God in people. Don't turn on lights on Shabbos. And although it's, for say these sort of light bulbs, not the filament ones, but the halogen sort of, fluorescent lights. Turning those on, off, and on are actually derabbanan of no lod. it's a derabanan. You can't create something that didn't exist before. But like he was trying to make the argument, he writes in letters, this is what he was doing, of he's really trying to lay it on, like don't turn off and on lights, because like you're gonna, even though it might technically be permitted on a Torah level, you're actually gonna lose Shabbos. So derabanans preserve halachas in many cases, like that example. Another is that they instill morals and values which already exist in halacha, but make them more pronounced. So that's Purim and Hanukkah. The whole idea behind Purim and Hanukkah is this with Purim, let's say, is the idea that God acts in the world. And we don't see God's name once written in the Megillah, but he's constantly behind the scenes because that's what God does. And he ultimately through these sort of quote unquote happenstances, things work out in the end. So it's the idea that God does. There is such a thing as hashgacha pratis. Well, we already knew that. We don't need Purim to have that idea within Judaism. But what Purim does is it accentuates it. That maybe there's something wrong with us. We don't exactly always get the point that maybe God is running the world, and so we have a whole holiday to remind us of it. Or say Hanukkah, as bad can get. The darkest dark. The Beis HaMikdash has been taken over, and huge parts of Judaism just can't be done anymore. Things are pretty bad. That despite that, the world can get better. That you can put in the effort, you can challenge difficulties in the world, and what you do matters. You can actually turn things around. And with God's help, you can do the impossible. Again, we don't need Hanukkah for that idea, but it brings it out. It makes us more aware of that lesson so that it's more in our life in a way that is more helpful, let's say. And the other is, say, preserving our national character. So derabanans like bishalakum, not allowing a non-Jew to cook for you. That's a derabanan. Well, why do we have that? Well, one reason is intermarriage. To keep a healthy distance between us and non-Jews in the sense of being able then to preserve the unique Jewish character that is hyper-obsessed with moral action. Which that makes us unique. It just makes us unique. There really isn't any other culture that is as hypersensitive to things, behavior having meaning than us. So that's worth protecting. So it's not a matter of changing the Torah. The Torah is perfect, but it's so perfect it's worth protecting. And that's the idea behind a derabanan. The Rabbi Yonah, in his commentary on Pirkei Avos, he makes it synonymous. Keeping a derabanan, being careful of derabanans is being an act of love. Ultimately, that's really Avos Hashem. That I love you so much, I'm going to take what you said seriously, and I'm going to sit down with forethought and think, how can I make this a reality? That's love. That's love. Taking someone seriously. And that's what a derabanan is exactly doing, is taking seriously the divine laws and the divine mission that God gave us. Okay. Now things get a little interesting. Because we have a dispute in the Rishonim about the nature, the spiritual nature of a derabanan. Is it something that is just functional, the way I spelled out to you guys, that it protects the Torah, and yay for us? That would be the Ramban would have that position. That it's up to Beis Din to create these derabanans to make sure the Torah is safe, and we were able to actualize it. And yes, it's an act of love. That's all great, but that's where it ends. But for the Rambam, he says something very interesting. He makes the claim. There's a Gemara Yushalmi and Yevamos that seems to back him up. That when we create a derabanan, we're actually creating a new mitzvah. It has spiritual significance. It's not just functional. To the point where we have this idea in halacha. It's called the zakein mamre, where let's say you have somebody who, a halachic question gets to the Sanhedrin Agadol. They paskin on the shaila. They say it's an issa derabanan. It's for sure an issa derabanan to be having matzah after the 6th hour before Pesach. Guys, don't do it. Well, a zakein mamre, if they contradict the Sanhedrin in a halacha that carries the repercussion of kares, well, we kill that man. That is a death penalty offense. For the Ramban, we would not kill such a man. If he wants to argue about, when you can't eat matzah, Erev Pesach, well, he's an idiot and we, yell at him and whatever, but no big deal. Like, we don't kill him. But for the Rambam, who believes that the actual creation of a derabanan is a spiritual act. It's an act. It's the realization of our tzelem Elokim. We make meaning. It's not just we see meaning. The Ramban's way of kind of looking at this is we see meaning, we observe meaning, we can act in accordance with meaning, but that's as far as it goes. For the Rambam, it's more than that. We actually can make meaning. We're meaning generating creatures. That's what we are. So for him in this question, well, if you wanna argue in a derabanan against the Sanhedrin Agadol, we'll kill you over it. So zakein mamre, says the Rambam, is chayav misa. That's a huge distinction. That's a huge argument. But that's the fundamental argument. Is, well, how far does human divinity go? How spiritual of a creature are we? How godlike are we? So the Rambam, he says, no, we're pretty godlike. We're so godlike we can create reality. That's how godlike we are. When we make a derabanan, it is a deraisa.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, isn't technically a derabanan a deraita if you really look at it in certain ways? Because, the Torah says you have to listen to your rabbis and
That's
you have
right.
to listen to everything they say. So wouldn't
That's
it
right.
technically be a deraita? So then why is it even a derabanan and not just add it to a deraita and then I just pick it up let you first?
That's right. And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's the dispute between the Rambam and the Ramban.
Hmm.
Okay. So who makes derabanans? There's a science behind this. The way it works is first you need to have a Sanhedrin Agadol. So we can't make derabanans today. In today's day and age, there's no derabanan making. And there is a relationship between the Sanhedrin that creates the derabanan and the community. It's almost like there's a grace period that when they create a derabanan, they have to have in mind this has to be something people can actually do. You can actually live life doing this. And there has been in Jewish history times where the Sanhedrin had a bright idea. They thought, hey, this is a good idea. Let's throw this restriction into the community. And the community's like, no, we can't live this way. This is horrible. So the derabanan goes away. It has to be accepted by the Jewish people. But once it's accepted by the Jewish people, there's no takebacks. No takeback. Except if you have a Sanhedrin that is as authoritative as the one that created the derabanan. So there's no takebacks in the sense that once the first generation took it on, you as the second generation can't say, well, it doesn't work for me. That doesn't work. But there is a legalistic sort of way of, yes, having takebacks. You have the Sanhedrin Agadol readdress the issue, and they can revoke a derabanan. This is very much relevant to us today with second day Yom Tov. Why do we have 2 days of Yom Tov? This is exactly why.
Why?
Because there's no Sanhedrin Agadol that exists to take it back. For the Ramban, it's totally justified. It's well, if the whole function of a derabanan is it's only functional, it's only to make sure that I don't mess up keeping halacha. So okay, fine. It's a technical pain in the neck. Okay, I'm stuck with a derabanan. But for the Rambam, where the way that he looks at derabanans is that you're actually creating a deraisa. Well, then second day Yom Tov is actually something different. that really is spiritual in of itself. It's not take, with the Seder, the way people look at it is like the first Seder is the real one, and the second Seder is like, yeah, take two, who cares? Well, for the Rambam, it's no, actually, it's literally a different Seder. It's a different mitzvah. Now you should treat it just as seriously as the way, on Shabbos, just the same way that you treat borer with care, you treat the malacha of lush with care. It's like it's two different malachas. So it's a very different way of looking at Yom Tov through the eyes of the Rambam. That being said, how does tshuva get thrown into the mix with the Derabanan? Do you have to do tshuva if you accidentally? I didn't know. You're not supposed to, do that. Or, like muksa. I didn't know there was such a thing as muksa. Oops. Do you have to do tshuva for it? So here it depends. If you're a Ramban person, again, the whole idea behind a Derabanan is you need to listen to the rabbis. Well, if you just didn't know, you're not breaking that rule. Of course you want to listen to the rabbis. I just didn't realize the rabbis wanted me to do this. So there's no need for tshuva. If you really knew, okay, that's different. But there's actually there's this.
Really like the doing the chait on purpose versus by accident.
Yeah. So when it comes to shogeg and a derabanan, I did it on accident. I didn't know. You don't have to do tshuva for that, according to the position of the Ramban. Because I want to listen to the rabbis. I'm a pro-rabbi listener. I just didn't know that I wasn't listening to the rabbis. Oops.
Okay.
So
once you do it though, according it's like from the rabbis, but you still go against it. That's when you're like, that's when it's sort of like you're going over an Isser Derabanan.
That's where you'd have to do tshuva. Well, no, but for the Ramban, that's where you'd have to do tshuva.
Because what I'm asking is like in a sense that, let's say like an Isser Derabanan, if you do it in an accident and you didn't realize you were doing it, don't you still have to do tshuva for it?
That's right.
So, but if you're doing it on purpose, like you'll deal with the repercussion because I feel like every mitzvah that you're going over has a different whatever. So is that the same case in a sense that like if you go over an Isser Derabanan, then it's not you don't have to do teshuva because you didn't realize that you were going over it, but like
that's exactly the point for the Ramban. But wait a minute, we have the Rambam to contend with. But wait, there's more. For the Rambam, who again his whole idea is we're creating halacha. A deraisa is a derabanan is really deraisa according to the Rambam. Human-made halacha. You do have to do tshuva.
I had a teacher who held by Rambam, so he'd always teach us like that.
Okay. So according to his position, you'd have to do tshuva.
That's why I always had that question of like, do you have to listen to a deraisa like a derabanan because it's technically because he was telling us that, and I'm like, please go into this further, and he's like, no. You have to learn halacha. Okay.
Well,
I just never got.
Yeah. So this actually it comes out that this is a machlokus in the achronim. There are achronim that side with the Rambam, say the Mishnah Berurah. He paskins like the Rambam, it seems to be. There are other achronim, say Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, seems to paskin like the Ramban, that you wouldn't have to do tshuva. This is still a heatly debated topic in halacha today. Is it that a rabbinical ordinance, is it a deraisa or is it, a derabanan? Like, meaning, is it only man-made and no divinity to it? We don't know. Good question.
But they both agree that we have to follow.
Yeah, that for sure you have to. That's for sure, 100%. It's a question: is it only functional? Like it's a good idea, meaning like it's like the way that the Rabbi Yonasan put it. It's an act of love that you when you have a goal, you have to work out a plan how to achieve that goal. Well, that makes sense, or is it more? Is this man creating halacha where it's our expression of our Tzelem Elokim? Now this all covers the community, but we still are left with the same problem as individuals. That we do have to know ourselves. We do have to know our particular limits and our like I said, the worst thing you can say to someone is you're fine. We're not fine. We have to plan for it. We have to work ourselves out. Do we have to make our own individual derabbanans, in quotes?
Like boundaries?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's an obligation that we have. There's more to derabbanans than just the derabbanans.
Okay.
Yeah. Because there's a that's a good way of putting it. This isn't just a religious thing. This is a being an intelligent person thing. That's it's not the right way of putting it, but it's that living in metaphysic land is it's abstract and it's deep and it's meaningful, but we also have to have common sense. Everyone needs common sense. No one's going to disagree. You shouldn't have common sense. And so it's like even here you have to have common sense. Just because there's no derabbanan doesn't mean that you shouldn't make your own derabbanan. So it'd be something as simple as, well, man, if you know that it's hard waking up on time for shul, or waking up to get on time for class. Well, you have your own personal derabbanan to set an alarm, and that's a religious obligation. And how far does that go?
Can you say the source for this? Like, can you say it in Hebrew? I just want to write it down and look at it in the future, probably. Because I feel like I'm not getting enough now, and I need to go soon.
Yeah, this would fall under the category called Seichel HaYashar. We talked about, what was it, 5 sessions back.
Oh yeah, if you're
Seichel Yashar is coming back.
If you're gullible, it's usher.
Yeah, being gullible is
right.
This is the same thing as being gullible as usher. So I haven't seen anything. I don't know.
So
but it's
detaching yourself is usher too.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Like we said, like if you detach yourself from wanting to do things, it's kind of like being gullible.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough one. I mean, especially when it's getting high intensity emotions of I won't care, or, that's no big deal, or that stuff happens, and it's like, well, no, we have obligations of avos reim, of loving other people, and that is an emotion. Some Rishonim don't learn it that way,
Wait, what?
but
you have an obligation to love people.
Yeah, as an emotion, the Rambam learns it that way.
What's up with that?
So
No, it's like when you
and so a part of that. A part of the unspoken derabbanan of that is developing courage, because it's darn scary. Because it's darn scary to love somebody.
No. Oh, well, what about? I was taking it more as being aware. You have to be instead of being ignorant, you have to put effort into knowing your surroundings.
That's also true. That's also true. I'm just saying, it's you kind of think of love as this sort of sweet, warm and fuzzy feeling, but no, that's brave. If you can only love if you're brave. You can only love if you're willing to be hurt. You can only love if you recognize your limitedness, and there's someone probably in this world who thinks you're disgusting even, not everyone likes you, and you have failings and faults, and life's tough, and maybe this person won't love you back, but you know what? Risk it anyway and love them anyway.
You don't say.
So that's a lot. That's a derabbanan, man. That's a personal derabbanan. But so it's a serious question. Yeah, it's a very serious question. But who knows? I don't know if there's a source for this, but who knows that maybe even these personal derabbanans, if we are like the Rambam, maybe these also are, we're creating spiritual meaning in our lives with the things that we come up. I don't know. I didn't see a source for it, but it's an interesting thought nonetheless.
I mean, it makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah.
I just never heard it.
Yeah.
In a way that says you have to.
Yeah. You have to live. You don't got a choice.
Yeah.
It's by default. All right, guys. That's what I got.
That's perfect.
That's really nice.
It was a good class.
It was okay?
I needed to hear a little bit of that.